And I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Kaneland Board of Education. And I just want to remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. And we will start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
Mr. Lawler.
Here.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Here.
Mr. Rivas.
Here.
Mrs. Barber.
Here.
Mr. Carey and Mr. LePayton are absent tonight.
And we don't expect them to join us, but with 5 members present, we do have a quorum. Are there any items from the consent agenda that board members would like to have us consider moving to new business? Anything? Hearing none, we'll move on. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. There were some changes made to J3 and J5, just changed around some information on there, and then we added 2 items, reasons for closed session. Item number 8, the security procedures and the use of personnel and equipment to respond to an actual, a threatened, or a reasonable potential danger to the safety of employees, students, staff, the public, or public property, and student disciplinary cases. So with those amendments, we're looking for a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved. Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. And now we come to item G, which is the board and superintendent salutes. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Williams.
Yes, thank you. I have one item to note tonight. Back on Friday, March 2nd, we had our annual countywide. The entire county students were home for the day, and staff gathered around the county. A number of staff members stayed here in Kaneland School District, and as a district, we were one of 5 high schools, or 5 schools that hosted in the county, and we had 56 workshops or sessions that we hosted for the day, and we had over 30 Kaneland staff members present on various breakouts and small sessions, and we do have a brief little note about that on our website. If you go to About 302 under Press and Information, you'll be able to read more information and see the names of our presenters. So again, we had about 30 presenters, and we did a real nice job, and probably a good enough job that they'll want us to host again next year on the countywide. So kudos to our staff and our teachers. They did a great job.
Good. Congratulations, everyone, and thanks. Anyone else? Any other salutes, Dr. Fuchs? Okay, we'll move on. This is the first opportunity in this meeting for public comment. Tonight there are actually 3 opportunities. Normally there are 2. We do have a public hearing in new business regarding the proposed reduction in force. This is the first opportunity, however. The board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. The board does not enter into debate or respond to questions during the public comment, but we do value your input. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you stand, state your name and village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. You are encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. With those rules being stated, I will now open the floor for public comment.
Madam President, will you remind folks to go to the microphone, please?
Oh, and we do ask that you step up to our microphone over here on our right. Is this on?
It is. You won't be able to hear the...
Okay. My name is Linda Shikowski. I live in the village of Elburn. I am an employee at Kaneland John Stewart Elementary for 17 years. I'm also the crossing guard for 16. I have been there quite a few. Most of our recess monitors at John Stewart have been there on an average from as high as 19 years and as low as 8. So you're talking, there's no turnover there. You're talking consistency. Kids know us, they come in, they start, the school year, they know us, they know what they're supposed to expect of them and what to do. Last year, the district cut our pay by $2.55 an hour, while giving the district offices a 4% pay raise. Talking about robbing Peter to pay Paul. This year, they want to cut the monitor pay again by another $2 an hour. Does the district office need another pay raise? If this happens, we will make less than we made 10 years ago. 10 years. Okay, by request of the board, Chris Atkins did a comparison of surrounding districts. Okay, do you realize that some of those districts have food services that run their lunchrooms? So what you pay a food service and what they actually pay their employees is two different amounts. And I don't see, and they also have hot lunches. We don't have hot lunches. We have brown bags. We take care of the kids. Let's see. We have to deal with a lot of things in our lunchroom. Doubled up lunches. At one grade, we do first and fourth grade together. We have 155 plus kids in that lunchroom. You're talking about kids jammed in there. You're talking from the lowest, first grade needy, to the fourth grade who thinks they're going to get away with something. So there's a lot of behavioral problems that we have to deal with. We also have allergies, massive allergies. So we have one table that's just a total allergy-free table that we have to wipe down before the kid comes in. We have to wipe her milk carton down. We have to check lunch boxes. And we have to wipe that table down again. And then that table gets put into the wall because nobody else could use that table. That's how severe this kid's allergy is. We only have one sub on the sub list. So if that person doesn't come in or can't sub, we just work short. So you try to do, like at this one lunch period, 155 kids plus with 2 monitors. So last year I received an email from the board stating that they had asked for a comparison. Did you just ask for the lunch monitors? Because I think you should probably compare all the district jobs compared to all the surrounding districts. It may surprise you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there other public comments? We'll go here. Oh, Rainey. That's right.
My name is Rainey Good, and I am a resident of Sugar Grove. I teach 6th grade language arts here at Harder Middle School, and I'm the vice president for the Kaneland Education Association. And I'm here to make a comment on behalf of KEA regarding class sizes as you consider the minimal staffing plan for the 2018-19 school year. The state of Illinois requires a report of class size as an average across the district, which is what we see in the board notes for minimum staffing plan tonight. This average number reported is much lower than many of the current class sizes in our district. We understand that the administration and the board will monitor and try to remedy any sections and classes for the 2018-19 school year that are above the stated recommended class sizes in our agreement. However, we want to encourage the board to consider the real numbers at each level in each building and not averages, so that the needs of our students are positively met. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, my name is Diane Lynch. I've lived in Sugar Grove for over 31 years. I've been employed for the district for just over 1 year. I want to make a note. Now, this is the second pay cut that's been announced to me in about 14 months of employment. I put together, when I first started, I was a rotation monitor at Blackberry, and then I had the opportunity to transfer over to Kaneland, so, the drive is real short for me, so, it was a plus. And what I did was I put together some duties. I think you'll be surprised. I'm going to pass these out, but I want you to take a look at these. You don't have to do it right now. I'd rather you listen to what I have to say. But look at these before you make a decision on the pay cut for monitors. Now, I'm probably going to repeat some of the stuff that Linda has already said, or if someone speaks after me, they're probably going to repeat some of it. So you'll just have to bear with me, hopefully. And when Linda said it's a lot of work, it's a lot of work. I think you don't realize how much work and responsibility it really is. And first of all, I'd like to say my comments tonight have nothing to do with the school that I work at. It doesn't reflect on them at all. This is towards the administrative staff within the school district as well as the board members. In 2008, quite a while ago, I retired from a major insurance company after 29 years of employment. For several years prior to that, I owned and operated my own business, a women's health club. I had two, one in DeKalb and one in Naperville. And I'm saying that because I want you to reflect on that when you listen to my comments. Within just a few weeks of being hired by the district, I attended a meeting where I and others in my employee group were told our pay was being cut by $2 per hour from approximately $17 to $15. I felt a little discouraged by the cut because one of the reasons I wanted to work for the district as a monitor was because it was a good salary. It was close to home, and I felt that the pay was still good enough for me to stay. Then just recently, after, as I said, just 1 year of employment, we were told that our pay was going to be cut again by $2 per hour, bringing our pay down to $13. And I don't know if you've computed that, but that's 25% of our pay that's being cut. That's a big cut, 25%. At this point, myself and others are beginning to think that maybe we should look elsewhere for work. I think I speak for my co-workers in saying that we like our jobs, we're very committed to doing a good job, but with recent pay cuts, we feel that we and our work is possibly not appreciated, and people may even consider that we're easily dispensable. I think that's being made quite obvious. That's not a good feeling to any person, especially when you're working, you work hard, you're dedicated, and you're dealing with, like Linda says, sometimes we have first grade and kindergarten. You think that, what do you have? First and fourth.
Kindergarten and third.
And that's a tough group. But when you've got brand new kindergartners coming in and you've got a bunch of them, and then you've got all these first graders, and you're trying to get them all to adapt to the new process of being at school, being away from home. All of a sudden, they're just like, they're used to just playing. They don't understand that you have to follow the process, even in the lunchroom. So that's just on the side. But from the info that I received, I found out that the other non-union, non-professional employees are not only receiving pay cuts, but they have had their pay increased by 7% in the past 2 years, and 15 to 17% over the past 6 years. And all the other employees of the district receive 8 to 13 paid holidays, depending on the group that they're in, as well as paid sick days, another perk that we don't receive. However, this is something that we understand. It's a part-time job, and we understand that we're not going to have all those other perks. However, that and added to the pay cuts is something that's just another negative that we have in our minds when we consider the pay cuts. During my years as an employer and over 25 years in management, I understood in order to attract and maintain good quality employees, it was necessary to treat them as such. I never cut the pay of my employees, nor suggested or agreed to reduction in pay for my subordinates. Never, ever. Conversely, there were years when, due to budget deficits, increases were not given out, but never pay cuts, and certainly not 25% in 2 years. In closing, I'd like to say that the job we perform, and I can only speak for the ladies at John Shields, the ones that I work with, as inside monitors, it's a great deal more than just wiping down tables and giving out milk. And if you, as parents or grandparents of children attending Kaneland schools, you want to keep good, caring individuals to be there for your children, I would suggest you think again about passing this motion or to reduce our pay. However, if you want a swinging door of minimally paid employees, then go ahead and improve the proposed tax cut. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other public comments?
My name is Onika Berger. I live in Aurora, and I'm currently a senior at Kaneland High School. Tonight we are here on behalf of all the students at KHS who feel as though they have been ignored by administration concerning the walkout that will take place this Wednesday. We are the generation who have grown up in a world in which gun violence, specifically attacks on students, have become the norm. In fact, we have become so desensitized to it, it hardly shocks us when a new list of the names of young victims crosses our TVs and phones, names that could easily be ours. The nation's students have had enough of this. We are tired of wondering whether or not our next day of learning will be cut short, our lives taken from us. To raise awareness and make our sentiments known, a mass walkout was planned, and every American student was invited to participate. The bottom line is, Kaneland had a huge opportunity to allow their students to make a statement and protest peacefully, and they completely missed the mark. This was meant to be a national school walkout led by students for students, and in most other districts, this was planned successfully. Yorkville, St. Charles, and West Aurora are all allowing their students to walk out of their buildings without repercussions. In our district, however, administration had an all too heavy hand, and what has been ultimately planned is contrary to what a majority of students desire. Administration took the progressive, bold ideas of the students and watered them down to something they believed would be the least inflammatory course of action. In doing so, the entire message of the walkout has been diminished, and many of our voices feel silenced. The desire to remain neutral is simply not an option. Gun violence is inherently a political issue, and attempting to remove the politics from this debate is not only irresponsible, but impossible. No matter how many times we are prevented from fully expressing ourselves, we will continue to convey our opinions and exercise our First Amendment rights. As a school district, we hope you will support our choices to fulfill our civic duty in our community and affect change. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other public comments? Sure. Well, we're here as long as there are comments.
I'm going to read because I'm much more eloquent on paper. I completely respect your opinion on this. I'm contrary, but I'll explain why in a moment. My name is Lorraine Wilgus. I've lived in Elburn since 1999. I have 3 children that have attended Kaneland High School. My youngest is a junior at this time. I'm going to start by saying just my main reason for being here. It is not. It's kind of the opposite of what you're saying, because I see what the school has done as the opposite. But let me, like I said, more eloquent on paper. It is not the place of the public school to endorse or support a political movement. By actively acknowledging, giving administrative approval, and helping the student organize a student walk on Wednesday, March 14th at 10 a.m., you've chosen to support a political movement it represents. It is neither appropriate nor acceptable. Make no mistake, the nationwide student walkouts this Wednesday are politically motivated events. Let me give you a quote from USA Today. According to the Women's March Youth Empower organizers, the walkout is a call to Congress to pass legislation to keep us safe from gun violence at our schools, on our streets, and our homes and places of worship. Since you've chosen to support this walkout in a way that even the students aren't happy with, but you have supported it, you've endorsed a political move. If you had supported 17 minutes of silence in honor of the victims any other day and time, it would have been different. If you had the teachers in schools talk about ways to help others feel accepted, it would have been different. If you had encouraged the high school social studies teachers to look at all the factors that fed into that awful end to that event, it would have been different. By supporting and helping organize a walkout on the same day and time as the political event, you are supporting and helping that cause. This is unacceptable. You've bent the rules for a protest. According to the rules, students may not walk out of class, let alone the school, without permission. You're giving permission for this event. You've organized for this event. You've endorsed a political event. I don't know what the thinking was or what was discussed when this was arranged. Possibly you heard that some students, obviously students do feel strongly about this topic and they're planning on walking out. That is your right and your choice. You are allowed to do that. I think it is wonderful that you are informed enough that you have an opinion on it and you're going to stand by it. Yet, when you have a political opinion and when you have a walkout, you need to support it. You need to be able to accept the good that comes out of it if rules are changed, if laws are changed. You also need to accept that maybe if you do it at a certain time and place, you're going to get a detention. Those are consequences for what you say and do. The students walking out should accept consequences one way or the other if they want their voices heard. It is not up to the school board and the school administrators to make it easier for them. The world is not easy. In school, there are rules. They need to be evenly enforced. It is also not up to you to keep them safe once they leave the school. It is their choice and they know the consequences. So if they do choose to do the walkout, there are other options that you had. The job of the school district is to educate the children entrusted to you. Keep the lessons and the discussions unbiased. Organizing a walkout on the same day and time as the nationwide politically charged walkout is not educating the children. It's disruptive to their day. The children that do not hold the same political views as these, I have to say, very eloquent. They know what they're talking about. But there are others that don't share their views. Their days are disrupted. It brings political tensions into school where it does not belong. Unfortunately, this event is set. You had other options. I feel you chose incorrectly. I just want to say that many others support me in this, and I'm hoping that the next time this comes around, you choose differently. You choose to handle it differently. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments? Yes, go ahead.
How's everybody doing? Hello, I am J.P. Driss. This is my wife, Gwen. We've been residents at Kaneland School District for 20 years. We have 3 children currently in the school district. We're out of Maple Park. Gwen is also additionally an alumni of Kaneland school system. We want to take the time to address the board regarding the district's bullying harassment policy. Though we know the board will take no action on the statement tonight, we respectfully request the board take up the topic and consider changes to the current form of how it is addressed, as it is not working in its current form. Our daughter has been involved in an issue of harassment for 6 months. It has affected both us and her emotionally, as it is an ongoing issue. This has her feeling unsafe and not wanting to attend school through sleepless nights, stress, anxiety, which has impacted her behavior, grades, and learning experience. Various actions have been taken to try to correct the issue over the time period by the district that have helped, but the main issue is still not resolved. I don't want to make it sound like the school has ignored our voice, though, as it is not the case. The principal and the dean take our calls, our emails, they listen and they meet with us, and they listen to our concerns to try to work to resolve this issue. The most discouraging comment, though, is when it's indicated to us the aggressor sometimes gets it the first time where it takes 37 times. As a parent, this is unacceptable to hear and leads me to believe the administration has not been provided the tools they need to address the issue properly. Through our long process and short on options to try to address, we recently reached out to other parents in the community via social media. The feedback we received was both encouraging and concerning. The Kaneland community is strong with support, as the list of people that stated that they were not aware of this issue and that our child, and they would look out for ours, was both humbling and supportive. Our daughter has received a number of text messages in her support that have helped boost her morale and calm her, but has not calmed her fear. The The discouraging part, though, was to hear how many other parents are dealing with the same issue as us, which is why we've decided to come here tonight. Their children were being bullied, some far worse than others, both physically and mentally, and some of their stories they shared with us were both absolutely heartbreaking and upsetting to hear, and provided to us in great detail without us asking. The fact that we as parents have either considered or have taken our the fact that we and other parents have either considered or have taken our children out of the district schools in order for them to feel safe is a problem. The policies and practices the district currently have in place to address the national issue in our view, are both weak and unsupportive of both the target and the aggressor and allow the issue to continue for an extended time. In our case, if it had been support in the beginning, it probably wouldn't be this long. Again, we simply ask that the current policies are reviewed and better support system put in place for the victims and the aggressor to better educate and prevent these issues from becoming a lasting and drawn-out process that take a toll on the children. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other public comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Margaret Langness. My nickname is Peggy, and I am a 28-year resident of Elburn. I am a lunch monitor at Blackberry Creek. I'm here representing Blackberry Creek, and as my fellow co-workers at other schools, I've been employee of this district since 2004. And I've worked full-time at Blackberry since 2006. This pay cut, I believe, is over 25% from what we were earning 1 year ago. We've received over the years raises and cost of living raises, et cetera. And if we are so out of whack with all the other surrounding districts, why over all of these years have we been receiving these pay increases? This pay cut we are now receiving takes me back almost to 2006 when I started. My fear is that seasoned monitors like myself and my coworkers will leave, and we will have a revolving door of new, inexperienced, and perhaps even inferior employees that will come in, because this job is more than just opening juice boxes, wiping tables, and handing out milks. As you can see with what my friend here passed out, we are there to keep, in my particular school, we have second and third doubled up and fourth and fifth doubled up. That is, with each of those lunch periods, that is over 150 students that we have to keep safe, that we have to make sure that their well-being is being met. We have to deal with fights at times, bullying at times. We have to be social workers. We have to be listening ears. And that takes a lot of seasoning and a lot of years to learn how to deal with these things. And we too have allergies in our school. We have to check lunch boxes. We have to wipe tables down separately. In the past, we've had to hand out Purell wipes to all 150 students in the lunchrooms because we've had allergies severe enough that everybody had to have their hands wiped down if they were even near this particular student. I feel that this, I don't feel that this pay cut would be in the school's best interest, and I hope you will consider what we have said tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there other public comments? Yes, sir.
I'm Scott Weber, Jennifer Florrie. We've lived in Sugar Grove for about 16 years. We have 3 students at Kaneland School District. I don't have prepared statements, but it's kind of a follow-up to what I've heard here tonight. 2 subjects, but they kind of go together. They kind of align. I think the bullying issue is certainly prevalent, maybe more so than maybe it's, I don't know how it's being addressed, but I think it's certainly there, and there has to be a way to help it. My son came home Friday, and he said, "Dad, it's like a virus. Once it starts, it just spreads through the school, and I can't walk anywhere without anybody pulling on my jacket or calling me names or something to that effect." We've talked to Dean and one time this year, and it subsided for a little while, but it comes back. Again, I don't believe there's bad kids, but I think there's some kids that act badly sometimes, and I think that needs to be maybe brought a little bit more to the forefront, and whether it's getting parents together or something to that effect. You start going down this path and you start seeing how the kids react, and then you have something like Parkland that comes on, and I think it's all related. And I would hate for something like that to happen in the school district here. I think it really is a problem, and I think it really should be addressed. Really, our daughter, she was in high school, and I'll let you continue with that.
So we have 5 kids total. The 3 that are in school now in the grades, John Shields in middle school. We have 2 that are out of high school now. They both went to the middle school and the high school, not the grade schools. For the most part, the kids' experience at the grade school at John Shields was amazing, with the support, the staff, everything. The kids loved it. They loved to go to school. But with our 2 older ones, they both had some issues. My one daughter was bullied in middle school, starting in 7th grade, because she had gone to another school, so she moved to the school. She, as a result, started seeking out different friends, and just not staying on track. She ended up starting to do drugs. She was involved with a boy who committed suicide because of bullying. She continued doing drugs, and she actually passed away in 2016 from an overdose of drugs that she started at the middle school in Kaneland. Not saying that's the cause for her death, but it certainly contributed. And so I don't want and the 12-year-old right now was they were like 2 peas in a pod. And when she died in 2016, our son said, "Now who am I going to call when I come home from school and have a bad day? I can't call Sissy anymore." Because she understood. And I just don't want any other kid to have to go through that and not have the coping skills and not be able to have self-worth and get through the school day without. My daughter, at one point, I took her out and homeschooled her for half a year because she wouldn't go to school. When that got to the point where our 6th grader says he doesn't want to go to school, he wants to go homeschooled, go to a private school, and move, then I think it's an issue. So we just want to know what anybody recommends. We'll get together with parents. We'll put together a kindness program. We're here to support whatever. We just want to make you aware that it's a bigger deal than you may think.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for your loss. Are there other public comments? Yes?
Hi, my name is Kapenta. I'm a senior at Kaneland High School, and I live in Elburn. I originally didn't come here tonight for any other reason than to be here with my friends and support. But the past couple of families who have spoken about bullying kind of struck a nerve with me, and I normally don't do this, but I'd just like to share an experience that I've had at the high school that I don't know if this offers, it probably doesn't offer comfort, but hopefully gives you an idea of some everyday situations. So I used to be a much larger person than I am, but every day I would come to school freshman and part of sophomore year, I was harassed about my weight constantly. No teachers, a lot of teachers had seen it, never said anything about it. In my freshman year class, I had an English class, 8th hour, and every day I was consistently terrified to come into that class because I knew from the second I stepped in to the second I left, I would be harassed and picked on. And the teacher would sit there and watch, and she knew what was going on. She could clearly hear, and nothing was ever done. And one day, I came in, they were harassing me again like usual. My stuff was dumped onto the ground, and I looked at my teacher, and she looked at me, and she didn't say anything. And then I picked my stuff up, and I went and sat against the wall. And then about 10 seconds later, someone had started throwing change at me and hit me in the forehead. And at that point, I decided to excuse myself and leave the class, since our teachers clearly don't care enough to report stuff like that to the school district. And because of that, I was having a miserable time, never really wanted to come to school. So I feel so terrible. And I really hope that you guys consider this, because it's something that's going on every day, and clearly if stuff like this is happening, there's a problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other public comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the floor to public comment. Again, the fact that we don't comment doesn't mean we aren't listening. So we do appreciate everyone who spoke tonight. You all have a lot of passion, and we have heard you. So thank you again. And we do understand if people don't want to stay for the remainder of the meeting. That's also fine. If you want to stay, you may, but you don't have to. They can sometimes be long. Okay. So we're going to move forward then. We're moving on to item I, which is our consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda contains the following action items: the approval of the treasurer's report from February of 2018, the approval of the parameters for accounts payable and payroll from March 2018, the approval of minutes of the February 26, 2018 regular meeting, the approval of resignations and employment of staff, the approval of Illinois High School Association IHSA membership for 2018-2019, the approval of the Fox Valley Career Center joint agreement, the approval of annual Board of Education purchase of student artwork, and the approval of the destruction of audio recordings from closed session meetings from August of 2016. It also contains the following informational item: the student suspension data report. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
You know what? Real quick. I'm going to ask you to make the motion again because I made a mistake. It's actually as amended because the resignations and employment of staff was changed.
So moved.
Okay. Second. And a roll call, please.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on now to the first item of new business, which is the approval of the Board of Education meeting dates for the 2018-2019 school year.
Thank you, President Witt. Annually, the board considers dates for the following school year, and we usually set it in the spring for additional planning district-wide that takes place. The dates that you'll see presented in front of you in J1 are corresponding dates other than January. There are 2 Wednesdays, and those are the 2 Wednesdays, Columbus Day and Memorial Day. Both of those board meeting dates from what would have been on those Mondays are moved to the Wednesdays. And the one date that's different, there's a rollback in the Martin Luther King Jr. observation, observing that day, and it's usually that second Monday. But this year, in 2019, or for the school year, it ends up being on January 21st. So then that one, we have the 14th and 28th. We don't need to move that week or that board meeting to a Wednesday. And so that is really the only change. The rest would be, we have 1 board meeting in March, June, July, and December. All the rest are 2 board meeting months, with the proposed time being 7 o'clock here at Harder Middle School. And again, once the board approves these, it's for planning purposes. And if for some reason, whether it's weather related or other additional items or other additional meetings need to be added, we can always do that with 48-hour notice. So these will set the dates, but they can be amended based on emergencies. And so just wanted to see if there were any questions or any input.
Okay, looking for a motion to approve the 2018-2019 meeting calendar as presented.
So moved.
Second? Oh. And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Sparber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
And Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Okay, we're moving on to item J2, which is the public hearing regarding the proposed reduction in force honorable dismissal. So the way this is going to work, I'm going to call the public hearing to order. Then we will have Mr. Chris Adkins give an overview, and then we will open the floor to public comment, and then after that, the board will discuss.
And the public comment is in relation to this.
Yeah, the public comment in
hearing.
this portion is only on the topic of the reduction in force honorable dismissal. So at this time, it is 7:40, and I'm going to call to order the public hearing regarding the proposed resolution authorizing reduction in force and honorable dismissal of non-tenured and tenured teachers. And we'll have Mr. Atkins.
Good evening, Board. The school code requires that if a reduction in force occurs in 2 consecutive years, and in the second year, the number of staff reduced exceeds 150% of the prior year, that you must hold an open meeting or public meeting. In the 16-17 school year, the district conducted a reduction in force of 3 staff members for this current school year due to the enrollment decline at the elementary level. Current projections indicate additional decline in enrollment for the 18-19 school year, and this enrollment decline necessitates an additional reduction in force. This coming year, there will be 6 staff members affected. Some of them are part-time, so the equivalent FTE is about 3.5 FTE. But due to the number of bodies and staff members involved, that would be over the 150% threshold of 4.5 people. So the reduction in force is comprised of 5 part-time staff members and 1 full-time staff member. Grade levels and departments affected include kindergarten, elementary specials, high school English, and high school math. The district would honorably dismiss all 6 staff with our thanks and gratitude for their service to the Kaneland school districts and students. One of the 6 staff members being reduced would have recall rights under the laws should a position become available for which they're certified. And the district is very committed to ensuring and assisting that these staff are able to pursue other interests outside of the district. And then, of course, if enrollment were to change, we would be interested in discussing coming back as well. So that just kind of summarizes why we have to have the public hearing, because last year it was 3 staff members, this year it's 6, so we exceed the 4.5 staff member threshold. Okay.
So at this time, are there any public comments for the public hearing topic of the resolution authorizing the reduction in force and honorable dismissal of non-tenured and tenured teachers? Okay, seeing no public comment, I will close the floor to public comment, and I will also close the public hearing at 7:44. And now we will take board member comments, although the next item is actually...
Yeah, we can do comments on this, and so some of the comments would be similar for J3. So,
Yeah. So are there questions specifically on the public hearing? Or the 150% or the requirements or anything?
Very well spelled out.
Okay.
we ran this through our attorney, so it's everything from Maureen Lemon has been approved, and we're following state code.
Okay. And at this time, there's no recommendation because we have J3 as the item for the
Right.
actual.
And we've met the obligation of the public hearing by hosting it.
Okay. All right, then we shall move on to item J3, which is the approval of the resolution authorizing reduction in force and the honorable dismissal of non-tenured and tenured teachers.
That's Mr. Atkins. The next 3 or 4 items are staffing related, and but before Mr. Atkins goes through those items, and I'm sure he'll also share his note of appreciation, there's been a great deal of dialogue as we are in the middle of a budget reduction plan and trying to reduce planned expenditures. It's been a difficult challenge and a lot of dialogue from staff and administration and our board. So as Chris moves forward, he's worked a lot and he's worked a great deal to get to this point. And so rather than introduce each of the next 3 or 4 items as Chris finishes one, once the board takes action, then he'll just move to the next one. Okay? Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
So the first item is J3, which is the resolution authorizing reduction in force and honorable dismissal of non-tenured and tenured staff. Again, as we discussed, and I shared briefly during the public hearing, we do have a declining enrollment that's affecting a variety of grade levels and departments. As such, the district has identified where those reductions are needed due to the declining enrollment. And then, according to the sequence of honorable dismissal, which is the method that the state requires us to use to release staff under the new para law, we have identified the 6 staff members that are listed here on this resolution for reduction in force. Of them, there is one that would have recall rights under the law. The others do not. However, as I mentioned during my explanation for the public hearing, these are all people who have served honorably and are being released with our thanks. And to that end, should there be increases in enrollment or changes in registration or any of those things that do affect our staffing levels, we would want to have discourse with them about coming back to the district. So it is with our thanks and with a heavy heart that we ask the board to pass the resolution reducing in force these 6 staff members.
Okay. Questions, comments from the board?
Chris, you said that we would do things to help them to transition. So what are some things that we do to help them transition?
Networking, interview assistance, recommendations, support with their resumes and those kinds of things. Probably the biggest thing is networking through the Kane County Human Resources Consortium, through AppleTrack, all those kinds of things. So.
Anyone else? Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, we're looking for a motion that the Kaneland Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing the reduction in force and honorable dismissal of non-tenured and tenured teachers as listed in Schedule J3. And I will make that motion. Second. And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Moving on now to J4.
The next item is J4, which is a resolution authorizing the notice of non-renewal and dismissal of probationary teachers. This year we had 2 leave of absences with which we were then in need of filling. We filled those 2 leave of absence positions with temporary contract teachers, and the 2 teachers served very well for us this year. We were very pleased with their work, but as we discussed with them upon their initial hire, it was a 1-year only temporary contract. That year is coming to a close, and so we are ready to dismiss them with our thanks again, with the same understanding that we would have for our teachers that are being dismissed that don't have recall rights. They do not have recall rights or an entitlement to a position. However, they have shown that they fit in very well in their schools. They fit in very well with Kaneland, and we would love to find a home for them should the opportunity arise in the future. So we thank these 2 staff members for their service as well, but at the same time, their temporary contract has expired. So,
Okay. Questions, comments from board members? Okay. Hearing none, looking for a motion that the Kaneland Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing the notice of non-renewal and dismissal of 2 full-time identified non-tenured teachers as listed in Schedule J4. And I will make that motion.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to the next item, which is J5, that's also Chris.
J5 is a resolution authorizing notice to probationary and tenured teachers of an honorable reduction from a full-time position to a part-time position. As the district looks at enrollment and then also registration of our high school students and such, we have varying staffing needs throughout the district that require us to reduce the staff members listed here, these 6 staff members, from full-time status to part-time status. They are not being released. They retain their position. They retain a proration of their salary and benefits that they have been earning, and many of these people are currently part-time staff members. And as you may know, over the years, we have a variety of positions within the district that fluctuate due to registration and enrollment. So these 6 staff members are being honorably reduced. Again, it is not an indication of anything to do with who they are, what they do for our district, for our students. It is simply the confluence of enrollment and registration. So.
Okay. Questions, comments? So is there a threshold where benefits, where they are not, where some people are not qualified for benefits?
No, we provide benefits to all of these staff members, but they would be then prorated. So whatever proration of FTE they are, they would then be responsible for that additional portion of the insurance premiums, and then they would get that proration of pay.
Other questions? Okay. Hearing none, we're looking for a motion that the Kaneland Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing the notice to probationary and tenured teachers of an honorable reduction from full-time to part-time positions effective at the end of the 2017-2018 school year.
So moved.
Second. And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Moving on now to item J6 of new business, which is the approval of minimum staffing plan for certificated staff for the 2018-2019 school year.
Mr. Atkins, before you get into that, please, do you mind just reminding the board why we do this at the March board meeting when there's still 2 months left to go in a school year?
Correct. So in the state of Illinois, the Illinois School Code requires that we give prior notice to any teachers that we would be releasing for the year. The intent of that law many, many years ago, I believe in '85 with the Ed Reform Act, was to ensure that teachers did not miss out on the hiring season, as it were, in the spring, and to make sure that they had ample notice as professionals with which they could then pursue other employment. And so that time frame is moved up to the first board meeting in March, which is unfortunate in that it requires us to share some of this information with a remainder of the school year left. However, more often than not, matter of fact, I'm struggling to think if there's ever been an exception to this. Staff members handle that very well. They're there for the kids, and that shows throughout the end of the school year.
Thank you. You can go ahead with staffing plan, yes.
Okay. So each year we put together the minimum staffing plan for the board, and we go over a variety of things that come into play. Making sure that there are enough staff to cover all the needs of the district is quite a daunting task. It's taken the administration, principals, with input from a variety of people since probably about November to begin preparing for the 18-19 school year. And that follows a typical pattern that we have used every year, and in most districts around the country, we begin planning for the following year before the holidays even. So there's a variety of assumptions that we look at when it comes to planning for our buildings and our programs. The first is some grade level assumptions and class size assumptions. These are the targeted class sizes that we've discussed with KEA. As you heard before from Rainey, the averages that we share are in alignment with what the state report card asks us to report. However, please do know there are it is an average, and as such, there's going to be specific hotspots that are higher or lower. We track and monitor those on a daily basis, weekly basis right now, but daily over the summer. And as you yourselves witnessed last year, if we have a situation that requires additional staff, we will petition the board for additional FTEs, like we did at John Shields at the end of the summer. The proposed minimum staffing plan is just that. It is a minimum staffing plan, so there does exist that potential to add to it over time. The certified FTE that we are looking at, as you know from the resolutions you just passed, we will be reducing our certified teaching staff by 8.82 FTE. There may be additional FTE changes across the district, but those student needs will guide those decisions. Special education guidelines are also looked at as we do our minimum staffing plan. As you well know, there are many things that we have to staff that are not optional as they are IEP driven. Some additional considerations and factors. Enrollment changes don't necessarily occur in pockets. So an important consideration for the board is that we may find out that we have gone up 50 students, but if we spread those across 12 grade levels and all the different sections, that may only be a student here or a student there. And the inverse may also be true. You could have a significant number of students move into one grade level at one building and have a significant impact on that building. Enrollments for Fox Valley Kindergarten and Early Childhood are still tentative, as they are in every year. Those are very much enrollment-driven numbers, registration-driven numbers. We are on track with our projections. Dr. Fuchs does a terrific job of assisting us with a longitudinal average for this district in this area so that we can have a good estimate of what our numbers are going to look like. IEPs, as we talked about a second ago, may require additional supports. It would be important for the board to know that our IEP needs at the elementary level have decreased by 7 students. The middle school will decrease by 19, and the high school will be increasing by 13 students. So that does correlate to that those larger class sizes matriculating through the system. And at this time, our total student enrollment for elementary is down 74 students for next year. The middle school will see an increase of 5 students, and the high school will see an increase of 36 students. So again, that's in line with what we know from our student enrollment data, that the trend is showing decreased enrollment over time. This shows our enrollment projections over time from 15-16 to 16-17 to 17-18, and then these are our projected numbers for next year. You can see that we have decreased over the last 4 years and are on track to continue decreasing and have those grade levels matriculate through the system. Here are the elementary class size averages. And again, these averages are just that. They're averages across the district, so they do show a decline. However, a decline of 0.4 of a student. Again, it's an average. If we look at the elementary staffing pattern, you can see here we've shown in 16-17, 17-18, and then for this coming year, how many sections and FTE we've allotted for all of our different grade levels and programs. And then that far right column would be the change, where you can see some of these reductions in the staffing allotments. We have a similar chart for middle school over here on this side, and then high school. Middle school staffing is staying flat. Again, they are just now beginning to get that class size decrease that we've seen at the elementary level for the last 5 years. They're now beginning to get them, so their staffing is staying flat. At the high school, you can see that our staffing dropped down by 0.8 of an FTE. So that 8.82 comes from 8.02 at the elementary level and 0.8 at the high school. Again, these are all projections. So please know that there may be some fluctuations within this FTE. There may be the need specifically at the high school for to open up another math class, and it won't change the total FTE, but we might have, for example, a teacher that was teaching for history classes, American history classes, and 1 world history class who might now teach 3 American history and 2 world history classes. So there are always those kinds of fluctuations, but it should not change the overall FTE allotments. Oops. So again, we're just summarizing where some of those reductions are felt. Early childhood, kindergarten, 1st grade, and 5th grade at the elementary level, along with the specials, elementary music, art, and PE. And at the high school, we have English language arts, career and technical education, and world languages is seeing a reduction. We also have had a joint committee work together to look at stipends and differentials, which is a part of our minimum staffing plan that we'll talk about in a minute. We are going to be looking at the reduction of the 5 teaching and learning coach stipends, and at this time there are no changes to the FTE for administration. If you look at the total staffing, which is the full-time equivalency by type, you can see how our staffing pattern has changed for teachers, support staff, and administrators, what those total FTE are, and then the difference over the prior years. And so we would want to see a correlation here between the declining student enrollment and then, of course, the decline in the need for FTE over that time. To give it a summary a different way, the 8.82 FTE reduction is going to impact the district with a decline of $529,200. The FTE for non-certified staff, we're anticipating a reduction of about 7.5 employees for the non-certified staff due to IEP changes. That will yield about a $225,000 reduction. The stipends for the 5 learning and teaching and learning coaches is about a $15,000 reduction. And then the differentials and stipends reduction is about a $39,000 reduction. And then the reduction of the crossing guard, lunchroom, and mail carrier rate to $13 an hour would yield about a $30,000 savings for the district. So all told, the reduction would be just over $838,000 in staffing needs for the coming year. So just to kind of summarize, based on those enrollment changes, based on registration needs, the needs of our students, the reduction across the district would yield that $838,000 reduction to our deficit. So, does the board have any questions?
What are the hot spots in the probably elementary classrooms you're kind of watching right now?
I have a running enrollment chart that Dr. Mumm keeps for us that has the current to date running enrollment numbers, and I'd have to go look at those for you, but I can have Dr. Layden update you in the weekly update. So during the summer, we keep track of those on a daily basis, and then every Thursday we email those to the union president and the lead negotiator with KEA to make sure that they know what our numbers are and where our hot spots are, and then we color code that chart according to the guidelines that we have with KEA. So we know red obviously is a hot spot, and then yellow, and then green. So we keep track of that very closely, starting in about mid-May.
What grade level has the lowest population right now? Are we starting to balance at some point?
Dr. Fuchs?
I think it is probably 2nd grade.
I know it's in the primary.
That's what I thought, yeah.
First grade.
The first?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Because
then,
we've had 2 years the same and 1 lower, so first or second.
The second looks like 285. First is 291. They're close.
Thank you.
so in theory, we should be flatlining at some point or kind of on a plateau,
Yeah.
right?
Our largest grade right now is in 6th, and it'll continue to work its way through the
For
system.
the system.
Once that 6th grade class gets through the system, every year that it passes, the grades below it drop, and they drop very quickly.
Sure.
for a couple of years, and then it does start to. And if I can mention, the $838,000 of savings, that's a little over half of our target. If you'll recall, in the 16-17 school year, the board ended the year with a $1.5 million deficit. We went into this year reducing planned expenditures by $1.5 million. We have another $1.5 million projected deficit for this year. We must do things to bring our budget in alignment so that our revenues are equaling our expenditures and that we're not spending more than we're taking in. So unfortunately, it is in staffing, but our enrollment is going down, so that's, helpful. And these are recurring expenditures when you save it in staffing, and that also helps with the long term of the budget, trying to get it back into a point where, again, our revenues are equal to our expenditures.
Chris, one of the growth areas I see is the high school. Is that balanced out also for the grades, or is there one higher than the other?
I don't believe that there would be a specific grade level cohort, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th, that's significantly higher than the other, but then that overall population does fluctuate bit by bit. And we're going to see that, like Dr. Fuchs said, that 6th grade bubble is going to come up, so they'll be there in 2 years.
Could you briefly go over for us in the decision on the reduction in pay rate?
Sure.
How that comparison was done?
Sure.
And what those comparisons are?
So as we heard tonight from some of our staff members, the average rate that we were paying that category of employee was about $17.50 an hour 2 years ago. In looking at that reduction and making that budget meet our revenues, we surveyed the Kane County districts. Of the surrounding Kane County districts, the average rate of pay for lunch monitors was $10.77 an hour. That average was based on the fact that there was Kaneland out there paying such a high rate also. So the decision was made to recommend to the board to reduce to $15 an hour for this current school year, and then to look at another reduction down to $13 an hour. At $13 an hour, we're still significantly above the $10.77 average. Of the 9 districts, we were well ahead by far, number 1 out of the 9 with our surrounding districts. At $13 an hour, we would be number 2 behind U46, which pays, I believe, $13.26 or $13.46 an hour, something like that. As we heard, there are about 3 or 4 districts that contract with like Sodexo and Marriott and Aramark for their lunch services, and they pay flat $10 an hour rates to their lunch monitors who come in. And we're not talking the food service cooks, but the actual lunch monitors that assist the students during the lunch hour and supervise students. So in looking at that average and trying to make sure that our expenditures matched our revenues, to be paying $15 an hour when the average is $10.77 was in need of a market correction.
And have we done market corrections with other groups?
We look at, so one of the things that we do for all of our groups is we look at comparatives. We look at comparative norms, whether it's with one of our union bodies, whether it's with our non-union bodies, and we look at what the market bears for that work. So for administrators, we use LUTA comparisons. We look at various trades for our mechanics, for our maintenance staff, and we make those comparisons to what we look at a range then, and we try to make sure that we're within a range. So if we're below the range, we've made market corrections to staff members to come up into the range, and if we're above the range, we make market corrections to bring people down into the range. And we have done that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions from board members? Okay. If there are none, we're looking for a motion that the Kaneland Board of Education approve the 2018-2019 minimum staffing plan as presented. And I'll make that motion.
Second.
And a roll call when you're ready, please.
Mrs. Witt?
Aye.
Mr. Lawler?
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak?
Aye.
Mr. Rivas?
Aye.
Mrs. Farber.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We'll move on now to the approval of the stipends and differentials for 2018-2019.
Mr. Atkins highlighted that a little bit in the staffing plan, but now I'll share a little bit more about the process in which they reached this final recommendation.
Thank you. So I would like to first and foremost thank the members of the Joint Differential and Stipend Committee. We had 3 teachers from the high school along with Mrs. Shroka, the union president, Mrs. Oslager, Mr. Goff, myself, and Mrs. Maris worked together to develop a plan for the coming year. So like we had done in the prior year, we looked at an audit of information, how many students were enrolled, and what were they enrolled, how were they participating. We did a survey of our club sponsors, again looking at what they did, how often they did it, frequency of meetings, number of students involved, those kinds of things, to take a look at what was going on currently with all of our students, whether or not we assessed fees, if they were doing things in terms of community outreach, and what kinds of students were being serviced by those clubs and stipends. As we looked at that information, most of our coaches or coaching positions per sport were within the norm. The athletic and coach participation ratios were within desired ranges. We did have a few outliers for the coach to sport ratio and athlete to coach participation ratios, and so we would be adjusting those. Consideration was also given to athletics that do not have alternate opportunities within the community. So as we've talked about with clubs and athletics in the past, we're very conscious as a joint committee of making a recommendation that would completely turn off an opportunity for a student if there wasn't something else provided either within the district or without of the district. That did come into our conversation. We did look at that. We wanted to make sure that underrepresented students had an opportunity for participation. And we also wanted to make sure that overlapping or underutilized programs were aligned. So we had a process that we used to make recommendations. Members were able to present proposals to the KEA president and myself for consideration. We did have first this year with a non-employee presenting a club for athletic activity for consideration, a community member, and that went to Mrs. Shroka and myself as well. The joint committee met twice to discuss programs, look at the audit information, participation rates, budgetary constraints, and then make recommendations. Those recommendations, if they affected individual staff members, were shared with those staff members in those programs so that those people could then come to a third meeting and share their thoughts, explain what they were doing, offer their insight as the people who on a day-to-day basis were working with the students. And then the committee met a fourth time after hearing from those affected staff members to make a recommendation for the board for tonight. So after having all those conversations, the board has decided, the recommendation to the board is that we eliminate the head dance coach for the winter. We still have the fall head dance coach. The winter color guard, we would still have the fall color guard. The 7th and 8th grade assistant and head football coaches at the middle school. We had a drop in participation rates at the middle school with our football program. We were only able to run one grade level this current year. And KYFL is continuing to draw students away from the middle school program. So like we had mentioned before, there is that community alternative for our students. And so the decision was made to recommend removing the 7th and 8th grade football program. Then we had the assistant wrestling coach at the high school position, and the boys soccer coach position, looking at the coach to student ratios. We would still be within that acceptable norm. TINA, which stands for This Is No Act, club at the high school was reduced due to the amount of students participating in it. And then the teaching and learning coaches at the middle school and high school Though not the coaches, but the stipend positions. And there is some misinformation out there. We have a staff position that used to be called teaching and learning coach. Those teaching and learning coaches were primarily also receiving the teaching and learning coach stipend. But then last year, through a letter of agreement with KEA, and to align to what they were truly doing, we changed those those classified staff positions to instructional coach. So the people at each of our buildings, the 4 that we added at the elementary, the 1 at the middle school, and the 3 at the high school are now instructional coaches. So I don't want those to be confused. This is a separate stipend that was paid out. So we would be removing those. The recommendation also includes some shifting of various programs. We have the Jazz Lab Band Director, which is a new program we'll be doing at the middle school. And then we have Jazz Band. Prior, Jazz Band was split between 2 directors. And because of how the students are being served and what they're specifically doing with jazz, the 2 directors have separated. They asked to be separated into Jazz Lab Band and Jazz Band. Theater director used to be 2 positions occupied by 1 person, a fall and a winter position. We combined those 2 positions. Same thing with the assistant theater director. There was a fall and a winter, or fall and spring, sorry. And we combined those into 1. Again, 2 positions, but 1 person had both positions, so we just combined them. The fall color guard position, we combined those 2 positions. You saw that we had reduced the winter one. We made it 1 position for that sponsor. And then Key Club was 2 different people were sharing that position. In the coming year, it will be 1 position, but we also increased the rate of pay on that one because of the activities that they do and the intensity of those activities. So once all of that settles out, the total impact on our budget for the differential in stipends and the clubs and activities would be a savings of $39,161. The administrative recommendation to remove the 5 teaching and learning coach stipends comes to $15,315 for a total budget impact of $54,000 and change being saved. So, any questions on the differentials and stipends?
I just have to find my notes.
Yeah.
Somewhere. I wrote it down. I don't. If anybody else has a question, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll ask.
Yeah.
Chris, there's some additional savings that we potentially have calculated already, or calculating in reference to, like, as an example, the football program. Since we're not using the football field, I'm sure we still have to water it, whatever, but there's some additional savings that goes with that.
There very well may be those kinds of savings that aren't related to the staffing allotments. This is related directly to what we would be paying coaches and sponsors for that work. But yes, with the football program, there may be opportunities to rent space, not use equipment, move equipment around, those kinds of things. But those would not be the staffing costs. This is just for the staff.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Right.
So as the participation fluctuates in any of these, the committee would take that up annually.
Yes. Oh, yes. So this is a recurring committee that will meet every year in February. We meet each Tuesday in February to add programs, look at programs, reduce programs as needed. So yes, in the 18-19 school year, if there is a significant need to increase something, to add a program, we would look at that again annually. So taking something off the table for 18-19 does not mean it's forever off. It can always come back.
And the audit portion, where you look at how many
That
sponsors
would
there
occur
are
every
to how
year
many
as well.
students every single year, that happens. It's
Correct.
not like it's
Correct.
instated and then it stays.
Right, no. Mrs. Oslager, Mr. Goff, and Mr. Rice put that into practice for us last year, and that will now be a recurring practice of ours to look at those and get actual information from the people that run the programs themselves.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Was there consensus with the team, or how did that work?
With the joint committee, It was unanimous. As I mentioned at the outset, the joint committee struggles mightily with some of these decisions because obviously at the other end of this is not just the staffing decision, but the students involved in this as well. And so none of it is taken lightly. It is difficult work.
In the case of like This Is No Act group, that it seems a little different than some of the others because I think it's primarily student-led. I mean, I know there's a sponsor that gets a stipend. Do the students actually quit meeting? Are they allowed to meet without a sponsor if they want to continue the?
Currently, we have a handful of activities and clubs, if you will, that have yet to be placed onto any sort of schedule for compensation by the Differential Stipend Committee. And they meet and they do those things as you're describing, and Tina could also do that. If they're able to have that sponsor that would do that with them. And again, if that changes over time and more students come to the program and the program begins to grow and develop again, then we could look at that again in February of next year.
They could continue to exist with a non-stipended sponsor.
They could.
Sure. Okay. Any questions, comments? Anything else? Okay, so we're looking for a motion that the Board of Education approve the adjustments to the 2018-2019 differentials and stipends as presented by the Differential and Stipend Committee.
So moved. Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. So that concludes our new business for tonight. And we are moving on to item K, which is the superintendent and board report.
Yeah, excuse me, a series of updates. CAC is this Thursday night, 7 o'clock at the high school, and I have Mr. Lawler as our CAC our board member to CAC. Okay. Next, we sent a save the date out to our staff and to our parents for April 3rd for a Kaneland school district safety meeting. What we want to do is provide an update. Let's have a three-part meeting. We're finalizing the agenda now, and we'll invite staff and parents and students to and share more information. But basically what we want to do is share what our current practices are for about a third of the meeting, and then for the middle third, as you heard in January, as we implement the ALICE safety practices, about a half an hour of that time, and then the last half hour allow the opportunity to break down into smaller groups by grade spans, because it is going to look different at the high school, it's going to look different at the middle school than different at the elementary, so we can share what it's going to look like, so parents have a good understanding of what it'll look like this spring and into next fall. And we will videotape that, and we will send the videotape out, or we'll make the videotape just like with our board meetings, we'll make it accessible after that event. And also in the small group, we're going to make sure that we host the conversations and put together an FAQ, and that FAQ can also go out with the video, so that way those that may not be able to attend on April 3rd can still get the information. The next thing, I think I shared, excuse me, in the weekly update, but annually the Fox Valley Career Center has their Student of the Year nomination meeting, and that meeting is on Wednesday, April 18th. It's a long meeting. There's a lot of great students to discuss, but it's from 7:30 in the morning till 10:15. And if we have a board member who can commit to that now, that's great. But if not, I'll resend the information. You guys can check schedules. If there's anybody that knows they...
Well, I've done it for the last about 4 years, 5 years. You know, if somebody else wants to do it, that's fine, but if not, put me down.
Thank you, Gail.
Availability, that's a difficult time for availability for some people, so I know I can't.
Okay.
Thank you, Gail.
So Wednesday.
Thank you, Gail.
Thanks.
And I'll make sure I let Mr. Carey and Mr. LePayton know.
Yep.
Next, for the 20th, March 20th is our next round of negotiations, so we meet with the speak group on the 20th of March, and make sure I'm not missing anything.
Did we already do that?
Julianne will talk about one or two things. Julianne?
We have on April 5th an FAC meeting. You need to know who my board member will be. We do not have another board meeting before that FAC meeting.
Here it says Ryan Carey and Pedro's his backup.
All right.
Alrighty.
So I'll make sure Ryan knows it's him.
4-5?
Yeah, April 5th.
Okay.
Okay. And if he can't make it, Pedro, I'll let you know. All right, thank you. The district received $27,114.47 for impact fees from Maple Park and land cash. And from Sugar Grove, we received $1,918.26 for a total of a little over $29,000. It's $29,032.73. This money will be put into Fund 21. If you'll recall, we do not have enough money next year to make our debt certificate payments. This will help. We're still about $60,000 to $70,000 short. So hopefully between now and next February, we'll either receive additional money from our villages, or we'll have to take that money out of our operations and maintenance fund. So we'll plan accordingly. That is our last payment. Those debt certificates will be paid off in 2019. Each year they've been about $330,000 for a 10-year. We refinanced in 2009 for a lower rate.
Okay. Reports from board members? Okay. We will move on then to topics for future agendas. Anyone have anything? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. This is the third time in this meeting and the final opportunity for public comment tonight. So if there are public comments, the floor is now open with the same rules as stated previously applying.
Hi, I'm Deidre Petrick. I've been in Elburn for about the last 10 years. And I agree with, well, I have two stepsons that have gone through Kaneland, and I want to comment on tomorrow's walkout. Yeah, is this appropriate at this time? Can I talk about this? Okay. I also feel that it's a political agenda. Our taxes are going to this school, and I feel it's not the forum to take children out of the school to do this walkout. The children are here to learn a specific curriculum. If students want to do something to show their sympathy and empathy, it definitely could be done on a day which the children have off school. There could have been a meeting before or after school to support the families through sympathy. Instead of walking out for 17 minutes, which really doesn't do anything, frankly, for the families who are suffering from the loss of their children, the students could put $17 in a fund, per student in a fund, send it to the families. I realize that this would not obviously bring the children back, but it could help ease financial burdens on the families, which definitely could show support for them. By doing this walkout at the same time that this women's group is doing the walkout, I really feel that it's sponsoring their movement, and it shows solidarity against guns in general. I don't advocate gun violence at all, but I do support the Second Amendment, and I know that even if there weren't any guns at all, someone would then devise a way to design and manufacture bombs to throw through a school's window. Chicago has strictest gun laws in the state, yet they have the most gun-related deaths. It seems to me, that, again, to be a political agenda for this walkout. And on the subject of bullying, which was brought up earlier, what about the children who, that you stated, can stay in the rooms? Are they going to be bullied for having a different opinion?
I'd like to add on it to you folks with the pay difference here. I really feel for you. I didn't even know that was going on. And for the families who have children being bullied here, this is a shock to me. I don't know what's going on, but something needs to be addressed here. But I'm sitting here listening through this meeting, and I'm hearing about how we need to save money. What's the total dollar amount of the cost for this walkout on Wednesday for the downtime that we're paying teachers and administrators and everybody else? It seems to me the cost of that would cover these people's salaries, the difference. So I would like to know this, if it was ever considered, well, a couple of things. Did anybody on this board read the groups that are supporting this walkout? Did any of you go on that website and read their mission statements? Some of these groups, you'd be shocked and appalled. So I think it's horrendous that this is even happening. But the bigger question is, we're listening about cost now. What's the legal cost going to be when the next student stands up and says that I want my political First Amendment rights and groups to be expressed to the school? You've established now a precedent here. And if they don't get the same considerations, what is the cost, the future cost to this school district when they take you to court demanding the same treatment? I think that this was a horrible mistake. If the children or anybody wants to express their political beliefs, I don't know any employer in the world that sits there and says, not only am I going to pay for it, but I'm going to pay you to be doing it. No, they do it on their own time. And as a former state employee, you have that right to express your political views anytime you want it, but it was on your dime and on your time. And you didn't do it under the authority of any position that you had with the state. And the same position should be within the school. We can encourage these children to express their views and their rights, but to actively demonstrate in a political demonstration should be done on their time or off school time. Thank you.
Could you give us your name? We got her name, but we didn't get your name and your...
I'm sorry. My name's Ed Petrick. I am a resident of Elburn, and I have one son who graduated from here and another who's currently here.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there other public comments?
Good evening. My name is Katie Riley, and I am a 11-year resident of Elburn and 17-year member of the Kaneland community as a staff member. I just want to ask that the board, when we're talking about class sizes and class averages, I took a picture when Chris was up here showing the numbers that are currently averaged. I'm putting on my mom hat now, so don't look at the shirt. I currently have a third grade daughter at John Stewart, where it says she currently, as an average, has 22.9 students in her classroom. She is one of 28. The other third grade class is 28, and the other third grade class is 27. So I just want to make sure that when we're talking with the community, we know that these are averages, and I appreciate Rainey coming up here to do that. Putting my teacher shirt, my KEA shirt back on, as a 4th and 5th grade teacher at Blackberry Creek, it says that my class number averages 21.2 students. I currently have 24 students in my 4th grade homeroom and 25 students in my 5th grade afternoon class. So again, I appreciate you listening to the true numbers that our students are in our classrooms and not just looking at the average. And I ask that moving forward and thinking about staffing patterns, as a parent of a Stewart child, thinking about the development that's going in off Anderson Road, thinking about the families that may be moving in there, I would hate to see my child's class size continue to grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other public comments? Yes.
Hi, Jacob Petrick, Elburn. I'm a student currently, junior. About the whole walkout, my parents pretty much hit it over the head with everything. As a student, I enjoy learning. I enjoy going to school. And with this walkout, it's eating up 17 minutes of that time. And we have an SAT and ACT coming up. We got AP tests. There's all of these finals coming up as well. And that 17 minutes can be devoted to those exams and studying for those. It's fine that students want to express their political views. I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but it needs to be on their own time and not on mine. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there other public comments? Okay, no one? Okay, then I will close the floor now to public comment. And again, we thank you for your comments tonight. We do have an executive session tonight to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. We're also discussing collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. We're also discussing security procedures and the use of personnel and equipment to respond to an actual, a threatened, or a reasonably potential danger to the safety of employees, students, staff, the public, or public property. And finally, we'll be also discussing student disciplinary cases. And we do anticipate, we do not anticipate having any, taking any action after executive session. So following the vote to adjourn to executive session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded. Looking for a motion to go into executive session. Second. And a roll call, please.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Break.